Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the New York session of the Reform Commission. I want to thank you all for coming out, braving the not so good weather, but we have to be thankful for the rain, snow, sun, whatever. We are going to go straight into the national anthems, and then that will be followed by the prayer. And I'm going to ask everyone to stand for those. Thank you.
Let us pray. Dear Father God, we come to you today, Lord, knowing, Lord, that you will be our guide. Knowing, Lord, that we are your loyal sons and daughters. As we gather, Lord, as Barbadians in this holy place, we gather in your presence, in your love, in your harmony, Lord, and with you. I ask you, Lord, for your guidance on our commission, Lord. As they travel, take them safe. As they guide us, Lord, let us take the guidance. As we share, Lord, let us listen and hear each other. Dear God, we ask you, Lord, to continue to be the people's guide for Barbados. And we are proud, Lord, to be Barbadians. Bless, love, Lord, and we are your children. And so, Lord, as we take this time together, we take it together, Lord, with your grace, with your mercy. And I ask these few words through our Lord, our Savior, Jesus Christ, our Son. Amen.
Please sit. This is a very historical event that we are engaged in today. As everyone knows, 2 years ago, Barbados embarked on a change of direction. Some may have seen it as a symbolic change, but an important change nevertheless, moving to republic status. And from there, it has been determined, obviously, that we need a new constitution. A constitution is the supreme document of the land. And I would like to think that for most of us, I know it is true. This is the first time we're going to have the opportunity to contribute to the Constitution of Barbados. A lot has changed since 1966. There are a number of things that are also in the future, whether it is how do we deal with the new methods of communication. We know what happens on the internet. There's good and bad with everything. But how do we as a country deal with these things? We are now, this moment, witnessing the rise of AI. How do we deal with these things? Because obviously a constitution is something that we do not want to be tinkering with. Currently, it takes a 2/3 majority. The Prime Minister is lucky, and she has a full majority. But the fact remains that we want to have a constitution that can serve Barbados for well into the foreseeable future. Some points contentious, others not so much. And what we are about here today is to present to members of the Constitutional Reform Commission. And I want to, at this time, introduce the members of the commission who are with us today. In New York, this delegation is led by the Honorable Justice Christopher Blackman, who is second to my left. To my immediate left is Shadia Jimmy. I'm not going to read the bios, they're there for you. Next to Chairman Blackman is Reverend Senator Dr. John Rogers. And at the far end is Professor Cynthia Barrow-Giles. They're here to listen. I've been asked some questions. No, there is no draft yet. We are still listening. We're still taking the temperature of Barbadians wherever from here. The commission goes to Boston on Monday. It goes to Toronto, and I believe Atlanta. But I want to thank the commission for seeking to include Barbadians overseas in the process. I'm sure today we will hear something about Barbadians being allowed to vote, Barbadians who live overseas being allowed to vote. I'm not going to present today, which is probably a good thing. But we all have strong opinions, and that is what we want to hear. With that, I will stop and invite the chair, Justice Christopher Blackman, to make some introductory remarks.
Good evening, all. I ask your indulgence for not standing. I have this left leg that had a fall 2 months ago, so I'm somewhat incapacitated. I give you the assurance that it was not caused by anyone close to me. It was my own fault. I slipped, so I'm not wearing a sign. She did it. It's all my fault. When Barbados started the process in 1966 to obtain independence from the United Kingdom, there was little engagement with the public at large. This remained the case for over 50 years, notwithstanding the significant constitutional amendments in 1974, 2002, and 2021. The 1974 changes dealt with judicial and senior public service appointments. That in 2002 established the death penalty as a law of Barbados and created the Caribbean Court of Justice in the place of the Privy Council. And then the most significant was in 2021, the declaration of Barbados being a republic with the replacement of Her Majesty the Queen by a local person as President of Barbados. During the debate in 2021, the government gave the assurance that broad consultations would be undertaken to determine the matters for inclusion in the Constitution of the Republic of Barbados. And consequently, in June 20th of last year, a Constitution Reform Commission was sworn in by the acting President of Barbados. The warrant of appointment requires the Commission to consult with Barbadians both locally and abroad on what provisions they would like included in the Constitution for the Republic of Barbados. Since the Commission was launched, it has hosted 4 town hall meetings and several call-in programs. And in March of this year, a delegation of 3 commissioners visited Barbados, the United Kingdom, with meetings in Birmingham, Reading, and London, and heard their views on matters of concern to them. It is now the turn of Barbadians in the Americas to have their say. We, the Commission, are here to listen. I am obliged to say, however, as I've done elsewhere, that every proposal advanced may not be appropriate or relevant for inclusion in the Constitution. It may be, however, that a suggestion or proposal may merit consideration for other legislative action, and if we so determine, we will, in accordance with the mandate in our warrant of appointment, so recommend. Consul General Mackey has introduced the members of the Commission who are here this evening. And going forward to the meeting in Boston on Monday, we expect to be joined by the Deputy Chairman, Senator Gregory Nichols, who will fly out tomorrow. And I wish to acknowledge the courtesies of the Consul General and the staff of the Consulate for making the arrangements for this visit. I do so with the special knowledge that you've been obliged to do so twice. As in March, the bad weather caused the deferral of that visit, and now you've had to do it again for this occasion. We really appreciate the efforts you've made. I know that some of those cancellations might have been very challenging for you, and it even may have put you out of pocket. However, the Commission is not in a position to satisfy that debt. You may have to look elsewhere. But nevertheless, we are looking forward to the engagement with you. We are listening, notwithstanding the provocation by the Consul General. We're giving you no assurances about anything but relating to voting. You have to make that case. We are not here to make, we're here to listen. And when we have heard from you, we go back and we deliberate. And because this exercise that we're having with the Americas at this time almost brings to an end our degree of public consultation. It remains for us to meet with the members of the House of Assembly. We met with the Senator Reddy, and also with the one major union. But virtually all these major stakeholders in Barbados whom we've reached out to have responded. Those who we reached out to and said they have not, well, the records will reflect what our actions have been. So thank you all for coming out on a fairly dismal Saturday evening when you could be all doing something more exciting. And so I look forward with great interest to what you have to say to us. Thank you very much.
We're going to get into the presentations in quick manner, but just let me acknowledge, as I need to, our permanent representative at the United Nations, Ambassador Francois Jackman. Consul Angela Kinch. There are staffers from the consulate here. If you want to, you can stand so that the folks can see who. They're shy today. I need to acknowledge as well Subdean Eddie Allen, Reverend Eddie Allen from the Church of the Incarnation. He was a former. It's a small world. And Professor Sam Tate is also here. Of course, we're happy to see everyone. So just let me say the rules of engagement. As you come to the mic, please state your name clearly. And you will then make your presentation. I don't know who wants to go first. We have a few. Mary Earwood wants to go first.
Okay, I'm going to give this over to them.
Mary Earwood is from New Jersey.
Yes. Okay. And I wrote this out, typed it up, in fact. And Consul General Holder, I'm going to give it to you after.
You can give it to the commission.
Okay, for your reference. And I'm doing
Face the mic. Speak into the mic, please.
this because I publish Bajan Diaspora Online, and so, yeah, okay. All right, can you hear me? Okay, so I publish Bajan Diaspora Online, and I feel like, or I felt like, I have a particular say on
Linda. Hopefully this will.
A lot of which I would say, in large measure, deal with a lot of hypotheses. One thing I can say to you is assurance that we have received a number of submissions related to the diaspora, which are going to be considered by the Commission. There is nothing set, nothing has been determined as to whether the diaspora will vote, the conditions of voting, or any of the above. So, so some of the things you're seeking, folks are seeking, we cannot give any voting information. And sort of assist the consideration of matters this afternoon. When this commission finishes its work, we will submit a report to the President, who in turn will pass that to the Cabinet and the Prime Minister. They have to make a determination what of these recommendations we make in the last. The Commission still has to meet and deliberate on all the matters relating to the diaspora. One contribution we've had from independent senators actually speaks to the fact that the diaspora should have someone in the cabinet to represent their interests. But that is on the table in the submission we've had. But this still has to be considered the totality of things. But all I can say to you is your paper, like all the others, will be considered. And you consider and determination made fullest effect against the totality of what we have had and what we regard to be the best interests of Barbados, where we go on the map. The fact that sometimes the matter is not resolved in the way that you may want to see it resolved doesn't mean it will not be considered. Have the assurance that it will be considered with all the other papers we've had. Particularly, the diaspora has been a hot topic, certainly from the legislature and papers we've got from members of the Senate in a very detailed fashion. So, I give you that assurance. Any other contributions?
Next contribution. We're going to have one read on behalf of Mayor Adrian Mapp of Plainfield. He's the only known Barbadian to be a mayor of any town anywhere in the world, and it's going to be read on his behalf by Miss Sonia Clark.
As the Consul General mentioned, this is from Adrian Mapp, and it reads, Dear Consul General and members of the Constitution Reform Commission, as a proud Barbadian, I was overcome with a great sense of pride and joy when our island nation, under the leadership of our Honorable Prime Minister, Mayor Amor Motley, took the giant leap that propelled us under the finish line to truly sever all ties to the British monarchy, thus leaving our colonial past behind by finally removing the one remaining shackle that still, after our independence in 1966, left us tethered to our colonial masters. The establishment of a Constitutional Reform Commission in the wake of us becoming a republic acknowledges the need for Barbadians to have a voice in the formation of a new constitution that will be for the ages and that will determine how we govern ourselves and by what fundamental principles. The following are my recommendations. 1, There shall be term limits for the president, who shall be elected every 6 years. 2, an elected president shall be limited to serving no more than 2 consecutive terms. 3, parliamentary elections should be staggered with not only seats up at the same time, with not all seats up at the same time. 4, 1/3 of all parliamentary seats should be up for re-election every 2 years. 5, in the first election, which shall be called 3 months after the new constitution is ratified by Parliament, all parliamentarian seats, along with the presidency, shall be filled by a vote of the electorate. 6, in the first election occurring 2 years after all parliamentarian seats and the presidency have been filled, 1/3 of the parliamentarian seats shall be up for re-election. 7, 2 years thereafter, another 1/3 should be up for re-election. 8, then 2 years after the 3rd election, the last 1/3 of the seats shall be up for election. 9, from this point on, an election should be held for 1/3 of the parliamentarian seats every 2 years, and a vote for the presidency every 6 years. 10, a date certain for elections every 2 years shall be fixed on the first Tuesday after the first Monday of a month certain. That is, it could be the first Tuesday after the first Monday in May every 2 years. 11, the roles of the president and the prime minister shall be combined, and there shall only be a president who will be head of state and the CEO. 12, the term of the presidency shall be a maximum of 6 years. And 13, parliamentarian seats shall be apportioned based on population. 14, a parliamentarian shall reside within the boundaries of the district he or she represents. Signatories to the new constitution shall be from both of the major political parties, namely the BLP and the DLP. It should not matter who holds the reins of power. 16, a Supreme Court shall be created, and its justices shall be appointed with advice and consent of Parliament. And last, the Supreme Court shall be the final arbitrator of all constitutional questions. Please consider these suggestions as you work on forming a new constitution. Regards, Mayor Adrian Mapp. Thank you.
We're going to have another read presentation. This one is submitted by Dr. O'Neill Paris, who's the president of Barbadian Diaspora Collaborative, one of the organizations under the New York jurisdiction, and it's going to be read by Mrs. Ira Carrington. This is submitted as a series of thoughts rather than the previous detail.
Good afternoon. From Dr. O'Neill Paris, President Barbadian Diaspora Collaborative. I just have a few quick random thoughts, mostly related to health, that merits consideration. Age of consent, age of majority, health as a human right, access to health care, environmental health, mental health, child health, children with disabilities, adults with disabilities, right to an education, rights of prisoners, adequate housing. Thank you.
Yes, he is. I should answer for Dr. O'Neill. He had to fly at short notice, so he just wanted to.
There's some interesting provocative issues there, but just leaving them there bold doesn't help us. What does it mean in terms of prisoners, for example? Some of the things you mentioned have been reflected in other contributions we've had, health, the environment, and life. But one in relation to prisoners, youth, and I'm interested in how you'd like to expand upon that. And perhaps when the context we consider, we might go back to that asking to clarify and expand it, make it more helpful to the position.
Yes, sir.
Okay, next we're going to have Reverend Eddie Allen.
Thank you, CG. Commissioners, I mean, you guys must be applauded for the great work you're doing in terms of, encountering these situations and also soliciting more input and so on for the Constitution review. I'm very concerned about several areas. I had to tell the CJ, I left my notes at home, so I'm just thinking through some of this stuff. I'm thinking about the Senate. Now, I've been here, living in this country for a while, and you have the two levels. You have three levels, really. But the Senate in terms of the senatorial aspect of governing and so on here in this country, these individuals are all voted. And with all respects to my good friend, Reverend Rogers and the others who are senators, I'm thinking, wouldn't it be nice if Barbados could also vote for the senators as well in terms of being part of that new establishment of the Constitution? So that was one aspect that that I was thinking about. And the other one had to do with, Cicely, you're going to be mute on this? Equity, diversity, and inclusion, yes, those the three aspects there. I'm wondering sometimes the sense of inclusiveness and so on. It seems to be so limited in terms of, again, Dr. O'Neill alluded to health care. And, in this country, there's emphasis placed a lot on inclusiveness, and so on, even in the church. And I look forward to the day when Barbados involves this sense of beloved community, if I'm to call it that, where we are all part of the gamut of not only health care, but also in terms of the unity of marriage and so on. So yeah, I'm alluding to same-sex marriage and all that sort of thing. And that is where I think indeed that we need to take stock and pay particular attention to the inclusivity of individuals, no matter who you are, no matter your sexual orientation and the like. Cicely, come over to the mic now. Dr. Wilkinson has a bit more to say, but indeed, I'm very concerned about those two aspects. I may come back again. I'm just getting my thoughts together and my notes together. Come on over, Cicely. It's your turn. Thank you.
Dr. Wilkinson, come up, please.
She's very concerned about health care and health initiatives and so on.
Cicely Wilkinson is president of the Barbados Nurses Association of America. And I don't know why she's so shy tonight, but she has a lot of strong views.
Good afternoon, all. Thanks for including the New York diaspora. And basically, my concern is about health care. And I do believe we need to pay more attention to health care within Barbados. Right. And statistically, I don't think we are paying sufficient attention to the diabetic care because I find too many Barbadians are having amputations. So I do believe that we need to change the education levels or improve the education when it comes to preventative care. And as Father Allen and I were speaking about the diversity, equity, and inclusion, I know that sometimes when parties change, Barbadians may stick to one party, but I do believe that it's time that we think about Barbados and not the party line. Because if we are going to move forward, we need to look at I would say the goals and objectives for what we want as a republic as we move forward. And I do agree that the senators maybe need to be appointed. And again, healthcare, elected. And when it comes to healthcare, I'm very passionate about healthcare. I was trained in Barbados, and I don't know if the Constitution would deal with this, but we need to do something about healthcare, especially Barbadians who are returning home as returning nationals. One of their concerns is about healthcare within Barbados. So if you can look at that, how we can deal with that. Another thing I'm concerned about also is education. We're having an issue with lack of registered nurses. So I do believe we need to look to see how we can encourage more young persons to study, and if we can help. Barbados is considered for free education, but for certain levels of education it is not free. So I do believe we need to review that again. And as far as diversity, equity, and inclusion, we need to promote that at all levels, because some Barbadians feel that they are not, and this is Barbadians' home and here, that they are not included in certain conversations. Like, I listen to brass tacks, and you're hearing the same 6 persons all the time. So if we are truly interested in what people have to say, I don't believe that we should just listen to 6 persons all the time. We should have like a more rounded and grounded conversation to be truthful. Thank you. Pardon me? Yes, the calling persons. The moderator, as soon as they hear the voice, they can say, "Hi, this is Linda, how are you?" Why is it the same 6 persons all the time? I know that is not for the Constitution, but maybe that is something you can deal with. Thank you. And when it comes to education again, we had the 11 plus for so many years. Are we considering changing that in any way? I don't know how the Constitution can help with that. Because you know, some persons, they get nervous when it comes to exams. and others can do exams. And I don't think a child should be, the opportunity should be lost because of the nervousness for an exam. So I do think we need to look at those possibilities. Thank you.
Before General takes back, Chairman Rogers would like to make an observation.
Thank you very much, Chair. I wish to thank the Sub-Dean, Reverend Allen, and the last speaker for their presentations. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. I believe that we are cognizant that where we are here is not where Barbados is. And there are different societies, and everything takes place in baby steps as it would have happened here. But I wish to tell you and comfort you that in 2020, the Parliament of Barbados passed the Prevention of Discrimination in the Workplace bill, employment bill, which included that there will be no discrimination against persons based on their sexual orientation. And then in 2021, the Charter of Barbados, which was crafted in 2021 for the Republic, the very first article of it says, all Barbadians are born free and are equal in human dignity and rights regardless of age, race, ethnicity, faith, class, cultural and educational background, ability, sex, gender, or sexual orientation. And then we went on in the second article to speak about community, and it says, everyone in Barbados has a duty to care for each other and to ensure that our relationships are at all times characterized by courtesy, civility, and mutual respect. We remain conscious that every generation is indebted to those generations that preceded it and is morally obligated to the one that follows. So that speaks to some of what you would have spoken about.
Gentlemen, next.
Good afternoon to everyone. My name is Ludwig Jones, and I've been in this country for quite some time. I came here as a youngster, so it's something like maybe 65 years or so that I've been in this country. My main concern, and I'm happy to hear the previous speakers speak on healthcare, and that is something that is embedded in me. And I'm looking at it from a little bit different perspective, and that is, we're talking about building up Barbados and the tourism that is, being pushed to bring tourists into the country, to help with the economy and whatnot. One of the things that affects that is the lack of good health care within the island and available health care. We have a situation from my perspective that our folks that are going to Barbados are coming from the United States, from Canada, from the United Kingdom and other areas where everybody in here, for instance, have some kind of health insurance that we have in this country and in other countries. But when we go to Barbados and we get sick in Barbados, that health care is not tapped into. And that is an issue. A few years ago, my wife and my daughters went down to Barbados. My wife got sick. She was taken to the QE hospital. And when I was notified, I got my insurance forms and everything ready, waiting to hear a call, about paying for her stay in the hospital, and nothing never came through. Then when I spoke to my daughters, they told me, because my wife was born in Barbados, there's no fee. Now, how is Barbados going to succeed in healthcare in terms of paying physicians, paying nurses, paying technicians, if no money is coming in from sources such as here in the United States, people traveling to Barbados and they're not tapping into the insurance portion that these people have. And all it takes is for the governments to make arrangements with the insurance companies is done with other countries. And I don't see why Barbados is not taking advantage of the situation whereby they can tap into the insurance of folks visiting the island. You're bringing big ships load of people, cruise ships coming into the islands, and people are going to get sick. So we're given, care to a certain degree, but we're not getting reimbursed for the care that we're getting in Barbados. So I think that's something that definitely has to be looked into, and not just looked into, but make a definite statement in terms of, when people go to other places, your insurance will cover you there. And it's just a matter of making arrangements with the insurance companies. So I think that's something that needs to be done.
Did you say your wife is a Barbadian?
Yeah.
Born in Barbados?
Yeah.
So that's how she was treated, as a Barbadian national. I mean, you raise a very vital point, which goes to how the hospital management should look to run its affairs. But she was treated as a Barbadian, like you and I, any of us here, were walking to QH. And particularly if you're not asking for a private room, nobody ever asks you about insurance. Because you're Barbadian. So you get treated in the general wards, in the ordinary scheme of things, without any inquiry. If a foreigner, if an American person turned up in that same condition, they'll talk insurance. But not a Barbadian-born person. But your point is a valid one. It's not a constitutional issue, but it's a one of value for the country at large. We have to find some way of communicating that concern.
Can I follow up on what was just said? Because it's so funny that it's so funny that Mrs. Holder and I were having the same conversation at the tea party we went to, and my niece, she was born in America. Both her parents are Barbadian, and we went to Barbados for a visit a few years back. It happened twice with the same niece. She fell off her stool at my parents' house in Barbados, had a serious accident, and she was admitted to the QAH. And she's an American citizen. So are you saying because there was no fee, there was no charge, we never received a bill for her? So are you saying also by extension that if parents are Barbadians, that it is extended to the children as well?
Well, she's a citizen by descent.
Sorry?
She's a
Citizen by this. Okay, I just want to clarify.
But
Yeah.
parents are Barbadian?
Both parents are Barbadian. She was a minor. It happened, and then it happened when she was in sorry? Okay.
Mr. Jones, we have a solution for you.
Yes.
I have another question.
Okay.
You can make a donation to the hospital for what you lost.
That's fine. That's fine, but there is insurance. That's my issue. That there is insurance available, and it's a matter of being tapped into.
You raise a valid issue, but you have to know how to capture it. How to capture and make it happen.
Well, it's international, in scope.
All right.
Good night, everyone. My name is Daniel Pilgrim. I'm a newbie to New York City. Over 15 years I've been here. I'm from Matsu Post Road, Christchurch. I have some properties there for apartments and stuff that I managed while here. And I don't want to talk about the healthcare section because I was going to talk about the same thing my man was talking about, but he already clarified everything, so I don't have to speak on that really. But definitely we need to get a healthcare system in Barbados in place as soon as possible for the elderly and the aging population. Now, I want to speak in terms of the, I just heard my friend over here was speaking about the health care, and she's supposed to be the president of the Nurses Association. My wife presently is a CNA. So I was here working in New York, and I want to know if there's any way that they can help the CNA people here that work in the healthcare sectors in terms of better wages and better working facilities, because it's not nice working in those areas. I get a whole lot of stories every night from my wife about conditions and everything. If you could help, I appreciate it. And then in terms of the no. No, this is not right. This was, yeah. Now this is for the commission. I was here a few years ago, and me and Motley was present, and the Reverend was there. Yeah, this is the Prime Minister, right? And she spoke right here on the pulpit, and I said to myself, this lady is going to be the next Prime Minister, and definitely is she Prime Minister. And so I want to know from Mr. Mackey, Consulate General, when we going to have a next general meeting? Last time we had it at the Kingsborough College. Remember? He was there. We had a good time. I want to know when we can get the next one. That's all I want to know.
These constitutional matters are getting far away. The Prime Minister will hold another town hall, I believe, but this time it will not be in New York. We've had back-to-back town halls in New York, but I know I get some flack for it, but nevertheless, Barbadians live everywhere. So the Consulate is responsible for 11 states, and we have to ensure the point was just made about inclusion. So that is likely to be out, not likely, it will be out of state. I will hold that for now. But thanks for attending and participating. Sonia?
So I want to read a part of the Constitution to you and make a recommendation. The right to freedom, S.20. That's what I pulled up reading the Constitution for the last couple of months when this first started. Yes, S20. Freedom of expression. Yes. The right to freedom of expression ensures that a person is able to freely hold opinions, receive and exchange ideas and information, and communicating with others without interference. And there's some exceptions. One of the exceptions is where reasonable restrictions must be pursued in the interest of public order, public safety, public morality, among others. Now, I want to make some suggestions about this part of the Constitution, because this part of the Constitution was dated back in 1966, correct? And we have to be more forward-thinking especially the environment that we're living in right now. And I visit Barbados often, and one of the things that I've observed online is that the public has no sense of the damages that can be done in spite of the fact that they have a phone and they can take a picture and they can send it all over social media without any consideration of who's in front of the camera and what damage it can do to the people who they're sending across the world, more so to speak. So I think that, and this is to you gentlemen and ladies, I think there should be some kind of consideration or restriction when it comes to social media relating to freedom of expression, because each individual, although you have a freedom to speak, you still have a responsibility on what to say, how to say, and to whom. And I think that this part of the Constitution needs to be considered and adjusted to take in consideration the environment that we're living in, the social media, these gadgets that we hold in our hands can be very dangerous. So I think that I would like to recommend that we develop what we have, but include some form of how we can control how Barbadians use social media and to what extent, and understand there's a sense of responsibility when you have freedom of expression. Yes. Yes. And I have one other.
Hi, good evening, Commissioner German. We do have the Computer Misuse Act, which has been invoked to address some instances of what you're describing, but I have taken a note around what you've asked for in terms of the freedom of expression and the idea that the use of social media may need to be considered under some of the exceptions. So thank you very much for making that submission.
Thank you. Sorry, one more. One of the other things that concerns me is the looseness of weapons and guns in Barbados. And we are, and I say we because I am a Barbadian, I will always be a Barbadian. And I'm not sure if we have taken into consideration how the Commission will look at the right to bear arms and to what limitations that Barbadians have in terms of the age limit or the minimum age you can have a weapon, and mental health, background checks. I feel that those kind of things should be in the Constitution, again, because we are living in a different society. We are not living in 1966. We are living in 2023 and moving forward. And I think gun control in a small country like Barbados needs to be part of the Constitution, because we have a lot of young men who have mental issues because of the environment they grew up in, the challenges they have, and sometimes they don't know what else to do. But I think that if in the Constitution we have some form of identifying mental illness and relating to gun control, that I think that we can have a better understanding and a better control as how loose guns are in Barbados. Thank you.
You're going to comment, Mr. Chairman?
I'd like to respond. Yes, I know. I'd like to respond to that with a question. In the absence, I understand in a U.S. context where there is a right to bear arms, it may be important to articulate limitations. But in Barbados, where there is no such constitutional right, putting what you're describing in terms of prohibitions, limitations, ages, etc., into the Constitution would create a constitutional right related to bearing arms. So it would have almost the opposite effect of what you're trying to suggest, because it wasn't in the Constitution before, and once you mention it in the Constitution, you are protecting and creating a right that never existed before. Yes, it may have the limitations that you describe, but not all of a sudden there's a category of persons in Barbados that would have a right to have guns that never existed before. That is under secondary legislation. That's not a constitutional right. That can be changed. Yeah, that can be changed by Parliament in a way that is different from how you would change a constitution. It's not protected. Yeah, no, it's not in there, but arguably with good reason. So a lot of this consultation is really about figuring out what do we want to change that exists in the Constitution, and what is so important and fundamental to us that we think ought to be included, because not having it there now is a glaring omission for the future.
Yes, Ms. Wilkinson.
Don't want it to people to think that it's only mental health patients that carry guns.
No.
So we have to be careful and separate the mental health issues.
Assessments
Because
are part of
we
the
do-
criteria too as well.
Pardon me?
There's a mental health assessment that is part of the process of obtaining a
Yes,
firearm
but we
in
don't want to
Barbados.
stigmatize that because you have mental health, you're going for a gun.
Oh, no.
Right?
No,
And we do need to look at the mental health issues. Okay, thank you.
Good evening. I'm Dale Levine. I just got a couple of concerns that the committee, some things. Dale Levine. I just got a couple of concerns about some of the things the committee addressed. For one, we talk about the inclusion factor, and they say it is in the Constitution that the people can't have sexual harassment, things of that nature. But is there a committee that would hear these concerns? And if so, are these people now protected when they go back to the workplace, that they're not being discriminated against further? Is there any protection for those people?
Sexual harassment?
Yeah, or
Under the Employment Rights Act, you had a provision of complaints towards the Employment Rights Tribunal. Left that body, there had been no cases brought before the tribunal in relation to sexual harassment or discrimination either, for the matter of
by
fact.
the fact that there weren't no cases. The question is, if there were, or if there's some going forward, would those people be protected? For instance, if I work for Mikey, I have a problem with him, I make a complaint. Now we're going to stop Mikey from discriminating against me, changing my assignment, or making sure I don't get the proper meal time, or changing the time.
There are penalties under the Act if there was a breach of the Act.
But, sorry, in terms of, you're referring specifically to the Employment Rights Act, and there are provisions that protect against discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation in that piece of legislation. But the Employment Rights Act does not apply to the state. The state is excluded from application of that. And that is, to the best of my knowledge, the only piece of legislation that offers protection from discrimination on the basis, explicitly on the basis of sexual orientation, that Employment Rights Act. So it's important to remember that our Constitution right now applies vertically. So it protects the citizens from certain types of discrimination from the state. So you're discussing two separate regimes, right? So the Employment Rights Act will govern employers who are not the state, but if you wanted that same type of protection explicitly articulated to capture the state, it would have to be in the Constitution.
Well, that's why we're here.
Yes.
So,
yes.
duly noted.
So I guess the question is I'm kind of prompting you to find out if that is essentially what you're trying to
exactly.
suggest. Okay.
Right. And then to touch on the healthcare issue, for me personally, at this point in time, I would never return to Barbados. Why? Because of the healthcare issue. If I have to leave ever so often and come back to America to get my appointments, why am I living in Barbados if I got to come back here? So healthcare is an issue, and it should be raised. And Maki can contest to this. We had 2 hospitals in Barbados for a long period of time. Non-funded in the Port of St. Peter, and when the nuns left, the hospital left with it. They left the hospital and never got running. Why? Government tried many times. Money was allocated, but nothing was done. So if we talk about healthcare, let's start there. Why should there be one hospital on that little small island in Barbados? If I get sick in St. Lucie and that ambulance coming from St. Michael, I'm dead. I might as well call the undertaker. Why call the ambulance? There's no point. Same thing with fire. If my house gets on fire, if my neighbors don't come up with a garden hose or use the bucket line, my house can burn down. We are way behind. We are advancing technology and social media, but the things that we need on a day-to-day basis to live, we are way behind. We're still backwards. We're not going forward. We're stuck in quicksand. We're sinking. We're not rising. Let's look at the things that need to improve Barbados from the small aspects. The third point, what are we doing for returned nationals? What rights do the returned national have? Sorry, not returned, deported. I'm sorry. Those that got deported, what rights do they have? How are they protected? And how are we as citizens of Barbados protected from them? Because we don't know what they're doing when they come back. Do we have anything in place that we have a right to pirate or why they were there? Or are they protected from that, or should they be protected?
You make a valid point, Mr. Levine. The question is, though, are the authorities in Barbados properly informed that people are being sent back?
Yes, they are. That's the question I'm asking you. How could we get them informed?
Well, there's some gaps. I agree with you. There are lots of gaps in the system. In terms of
their holes.
Well, you know, one of the gaps in the system is that the criminal record acquired by the deportee is not part of the record in Barbados. So, if that deportee commits an offense and the jury returns a verdict of guilty, and you go to the keeper of the record and said, what can you say about Mr. Levine? The answer is nothing, sir. No, Mr. Levine went back to Barbados for the most heinous of crimes. I had a man who came back to Barbados from Canada who had killed would be charged with murder. And he had a particular mode of sending you on to your maker. He was a butcher, and he had a particular way of using a knife on you that you immediately died. When he was convicted, he was clean as a whistle. He had done nothing in Barbados. He had a bad record in Canada. Now, I'll tell you something, Mr. Levine. I tried for several years to ask commissioners of police, both in Barbados and elsewhere, to make that something of concern, to get the record amended to ensure that that criminal record follows. It hasn't happened. I've retired now almost 10 years from the bench, and I started this more than 20 years ago. It doesn't happen because unless the politicians buy into it and they see votes in it at the end of the day, and Tony Best, don't publish this, huh? No, he knows that if he publishes it, what's going to happen to him? Nothing happens. There are certain things that need to happen that's just plain common sense. But nobody does it. So you ask about the deportee. Unless that deportee's record gets into the system, he comes in for sentencing as if he has no record. And therefore the judge is obliged to give him the bottom end of the scale. Whatever the public may think. And that is the reality we have to live with.
So then I advise you to pass that torch to the international lawyer and let she keep fighting it now.
Well, she doesn't practice at the criminal bar, so don't put that off her.
She don't have to practice it. It's a theoretical part to it. She can put it in writing. And the other thing, I hear you talk about the freedom. So I think that people should have the right to protest and demonstrate on things that they don't feel comfortable with. They should come out and gather peacefully and protest, as long as it's not interfering with
We can do that. We can do that in Barbados.
Well, good, excellent. And we go back to the inclusion and those kinds of things, and I think that we need to now give the right for the same-sex marriage and those things to come into play. I think that's a big part because we're moving forward, and these are the times where all these things are prevalent, and they should be exposed and should be welcome. At the end of the day, it's human rights we're talking about. So thank you again for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Consul General, Chairperson Blackman, members of the panel, ladies and gentlemen, my concern is land use. Quite, I'm kidding? No, I'm not.
Your name?
Joycelyn, Brian. Quite recently, I was reading that Samlor's Castle is now a brand new hotel, and I was wondering if the slave pit has been demolished or whether it still exists. I think that's a prominent landmark. It's part of our history, and I think our Constitution something should be included to protect our landmarks. It's our history. There's nothing we can do to erase that. It's already there. Secondly, I would like to see in the Constitution something that will protect overseas persons who own land in Barbados, who have been swindled out of their land. As a small landowner, I have very much concerns about that, the protection of residents living overseas. Also, pardon me? Something to protect people living overseas. Sometimes you go back home and you no longer own your land. It's owned by your attorney, it's owned by other people that you're totally unaware of. your taxes are paid and everything, but still you don't own the land. We would like something in the Constitution that would protect us. Is not a constitutional issue, land protection. Also, no foreign entity should own our ports. By that I mean entry into the country, like your airport and your harbor, and any additional places that people enter into the country should not be owned by foreigners, should be kept to the locals. Also, before we, I don't know if this is a constitutional issue, before we appoint foreigners to key position, that we have exhausted all of our avenues in finding local people at home or abroad that can fill those positions. I'm not sure whether that is constitutional or not. I just got the book today. I just heard about the meeting this morning. I had no time to do any research. So forgive me if I am in error. I'll put a disclaimer on that. But very important, I would like to see protection of lands owned by foreigners, especially if their taxes are up to date. Owned by Barbadians, yes. Also, make it a little more difficult for foreigners to come and sweep up our lands, and make it available to locals first before foreigners can claim that. In other words, I know people invest, and investment is important, but still consider the local people. Make sure that they're contented also. Make funds available, loans available, whatever you have to make available to them so that they can make the acquisitions also. Thank you.
Ms. Bryan, thank you for coming out even at very late notice. Thank you for coming and raising your concerns. Thank you very much.
Ms. Medford.
Good evening. My name is Jalissa Medford, and I'm the new Secretary to Consul General Holder. 2 points. As a young adult, I recently migrated to the U.S., but in the latter years, before my migration, that is, my problem were the taxes. I believe taxes are necessary, is our home, and we should maintain it, but I also believe that, there should be a limit to it. And for me, the 2% foreign tax, that does not, well, the longevity of it, it's still existing to me. It was supposed to be temporary, I believe, and it's still there. And for me, yeah. And on online purchases, and we're in a world where, we're advancing. Barbados, is the Caribbean, America, the land of everything. They have access to probably better products, and it feels as though it's a punishment that we ought to go that route, to go, to go to e-commerce. And I feel like, that particular tax, and along with others, should be revised. To me, it just does not make sense. And capital punishment. It's gonna be controversial, but I remember as a kid, there was this one particular death, and my mom and I, we were driving, and they said, so mommy, the person that killed her, it was a young girl. I remember she was from Parkinson Memorial School, and I think she was found behind a track or something. And I remember I asked my mother, so the person that does it, he's gonna be killed too. And she was like, Jay, it doesn't work like that. And for me, from such a young age, I always believed that if you did the crime, you should do it too. And for me, present day is almost as if you do a crime, as serious as that, you go to jail. You're up there for 2 years, but then you come out, and now with technology, it's almost like you're a celebrity. So you're on Instagram Live, and it'd be like, oh, well, John Brown now come home, but, my family is suffering because he killed my daughter, but yet still I'm watching him parading. So I believe that capital punishment should still be active. That's it.
That one.
The reality is, don't expect it anytime soon. The successive governments, successive courts have held that is unconstitutional. While the death penalty is on the statute book, it is not automatically imposed. When the Crown asked for the death penalty to be imposed, let me back up. Back in the day, on the conclusion of a murder trial, the sentence of death was passed. When there is now a death has occurred, it's the option of the Crown to determine whether asking for the death penalty or not. And I have to say so at the outset of the trial. If the Crown asks for the death penalty and the jury convict, they then have to go into a sentencing phase before the death penalty can be imposed. At that point, the court will order psychiatric reports, and a whole raft of people come to say the young Johnny who had a misused childhood, blah, 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 blah. So it comes down at the end of the day to the trial judge having to decide, having heard all the submissions, read all the reports, whether the death penalty is appropriate for this person. The law in that regard is the same in Barbados now. Barbados just come on board. But that law was in place in Bahamas and Belize at the turn of the century. And even when all the reports have been done, and I served in both countries, Bahamas and Belize, no judge has yet invoked the death penalty, even though it was the jury convicted and they went into the sentencing phase and the Crown asked for it. And when people thought that the Caribbean Court of Justice would be more or less the way for it, go back and look at your history. The foundation judges of the Caribbean Court of Justice, when they sat in the Eastern Caribbean Court, led the way before Privy Council did in walking away from the death penalty. And whereas the Privy Council recently affirmed the death penalty as the law of Trinidad and Tobago, as it did of Barbados in Boyce and Joseph, one of the things that undercuts the use of the death penalty is that Barbados signed on to the inter-American treaties that are against the death penalty. And then because we brought on to the jurisprudence of the Privy Council in Pratt and Morgan in 1994, they've been on death row for 5 years or more and haven't been executed. It'd then be a cruel and a human punishment to execute you. And the way how things ran them out 5 years ago, so they automatically have to go into a phase where you say, well, your life. So although the statute book of Barbados and the Constitution of Barbados still on paper preserves the death penalty, it's only on paper. It's only on paper.
If you want to make a point, go to the mic. If you want to make a point, go to the mic. Thank you.
Most people know who I am. I'm Treva Holder. The point you made is a really good point. I get it. But my problem is, I think the media glorifies criminals. All right? I think they do. They kind of, actually in Barbados, it is when their picture is not in the paper, they're They're groups. Man, he didn't get his picture. So in a lot of cases, we make these criminal celebrities by the way we have them in the paper doing thumbs up and all sorts of things. You have taken a life. You have taken someone's life. And you cannot be a celebrity in the land in which I was born. Right? But that's how the law is. Like you quite rightly said, it's on paper, but that's the only place it is.
Sorry, I was asked, should these matters not go to referendum? And, if Barbadians vote for capital punishment, should it not remain?
Sorry, let's be clear. It does exist. It's just not mandatory. And the reality is, when some person is convicted, they have the right, from a human rights perspective, to explore every single opportunity for appeal and every single legal recourse that they have. In the region, and in Barbados in particular, that process invariably extends beyond that 5-year mark that has been determined that it's cruel and inhumane punishment to have someone sitting on death row for 5 years. So the reality is that, practically speaking, the execution, even if, like the chair mentioned, a judge were to pass down that sentence, once you afford that person the opportunity to go through their entire rights-based process to appeal, etc., it exceeds the time period. So unless there's a drastic change in the legal system itself and the timing for the dispensation of justice and the exhaustion of those opportunities, I cannot see how that changes. And I'm not sure that even if there were changes made to the Constitution with respect to it, there's still, the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, but there are still international obligations. There's a wider context that the country has to operate in.
So, get that reality, said reality. But for me, the reality is that you took a life, and it's almost as if you're protected. Is this not a forum where certain aspects should be revised, or we propose that it be revised? Because I feel, like you said, you just went down a whole line of, how to put them on a certain, sorry, you can't put them on like for 5 years, for more than 5 years. But at the same time, had no voice, and the reality of it too, a life is gone. The life has all the protection.
So it is in the Constitution. Outside of what exists in the Constitution, I'm not sure that there's anything that we can write into the Constitution that will be remedying what you are asking. Essentially, you want to know, how do we get to a position where we can actually execute people? And there's nothing that this commission can recommend in the Constitution that could move us closer to that point, because we already have that power in the Constitution. It just is not mandatory anymore. There is an option. But outside of the Constitution, there are factors that make it practically unlikely that an execution would occur.
Okay. I'm not.
5 years from conviction.
Yeah.
5 years from conviction and not executed is considered inhumane.
Yes.
Depends on what the judge says.
Typically, it's commuted.
Typically, it's commuted, yes.
So I'm gonna jump from the hangman's loose and whatever. But I'm very concerned about pollution And I don't know if climate change has anything to do with the reviewing of the Constitution. I was back home recently at Codrington College for my alma mater for a couple of days, and then the principal turned to me and he says, Eddie, we need one of those things that can help chip wood, the trees, because we can no longer burn. And I thought that was so awesome. So I'm in the process now of trying to get a wood chipper for Codrington. But be that as it may, you know, I don't know if the commissioners, if you have received information concerning climate change and pollution and so on, because this is a serious matter. Right now here, I'm speaking of myself, I've just become a beekeeper. And we have a beautiful apiary at the cathedral where we have like 30,000 bees right now. And this is something that I wanted to do even when I lived back home and so on. And it'll be interesting if we can get maybe the schools starting apiaries. The bees are dying, and these are creatures that help to sustain us where we are and who we are and so on. So there's some interesting facts here that I pulled up from my comments that I really wanted to use. The ocean absorbs most of the heat we produce, and we are losing 1.2 trillion tons of things like ice each year. Air pollution is both good and bad, we know that. So what are we doing? I'm hoping that we can help to curb some of the emissions and so on from the vehicles and all that sort of thing. I don't know if that would be in Constitution or not. And I also have here, our oceans are dying. And you know, Barbados, we have some of the best oceans around us and that sort of thing, and sea and all that. We use more of the Earth's resources than it can renew. These are things that persons need to be aware of. I don't know if the Constitution can address that.
Thank you, Sabdeen. Well, as you may know, you've been back recently. Barbados has pledged to be fossil fuel free by 2030. And we also have the largest fleet of electric buses in the Caribbean at this point in time. But some of the things you've mentioned there are things that, again, I go back to the Charter of 2021, where in the Charter of 2021, Article 4 of that charter says, everyone has a right to live in a healthy and balanced environment and has a duty to participate in its preservation, conservation, enhancement, and regeneration. We appreciate the defining importance of our land and sea to our identity and way of life, and therefore also pledge to protect the free and unrestricted access to all our beaches and public spaces, which is an inalienable right for every Barbadian. But then it goes on to say, under the section Environment, Sustainable Development and Resilience, we acknowledge the climate crisis and our duty to be the world leaders in the promotion of and agitation for global recognition of this clear and present danger to our lives and livelihood. We pledge to adopt innovative policies and programs to adapt and mitigate against our inherently vulnerable circumstances to build resilience and ensure our survival as a people and country. So it's there already articulated in our hopes and aspirations as a people.
So we're at the end, unless there's any fundamental constitutional point to be made. Go, sir.
Good night, everybody. My name is Benjamin Yearwood. I have the privilege of being Mary's husband, and glad to be here for this historic event. A couple of things. Well, the first point that's constitutionally related was something that Mary and I discussed. Mr. Justice, you talked about that there's a cabinet position being considered to consider diaspora affairs. Right. It's considered that.
Asking the commission to provide that the diaspora issues should be considered by, have a cabinet overview perspective.
Right. Gotcha. So I think that what would be better is if you had a special member of parliament or delegate to do that, somebody that would look after diaspora affairs and also that could propose legislation, even if they couldn't vote. Like they have territorial delegates here in the United States, but it'd be better if they were a member of parliament and could vote. That was the first thing. Second thing is maybe not so much related, is I recently retired, would love to retire, go to Barbados. But like here in the U.S., they have retirement communities, but I don't think there are any. They are?
There's just one built out in St. George.
Okay.
Vermont.
Okay, well, definitely,
Vermont was supposed to be
definitely
one.
encourage, definitely encourage that.
There are few, not a lot, but there are a few.
Okay, very good.
Sir Optimus.
Yeah.
Coverly was
Yeah.
started.
Okay.
And Vermont as
And
well.
finally, to end with that, I would just agree with all the folks that said that health care is a big deal. I hear two things, that the healthcare system in Queen Elizabeth Hospital is very good, and then I hear other things that are so maybe it's just PR or something along those lines. That's a big deal for people who want to move back or move to Barbados.
Let me just say this. Barbados has a better health service than most of the islands in the Eastern Caribbean, including as far as things even for going to Trinidad. We have a reasonable health service. And they have some supplemental things outside of the hospital, Bayview, Sandy Crest, you name it, FMH. There's no shortage of facilities. The Queen Elizabeth Hospital, however, is its worst enemy in terms of how they run their affairs. I've long argued that a hospital should be treated as a hotel for the sick, and that if you fall ill after 4 o'clock on a Friday, you shouldn't have to wait till Monday morning to get onto a ward. And God help you if you fall sick on Monday, Thursday, because you ain't getting onto that ward to Tuesday. And the system only works if somebody exceptional falls ill outside the normal hours. I was a patient in there for a couple of days last year. But that's not a constitutional issue. But I also want to say this, though, that Barbadians can come home to Barbados and get the care and attention for ordinary matters, and I will suggest great respect to the gentleman in the red shirt. He will not die before the assistance comes.
I have a question about the first suggestion when you spoke to the special member of parliament or a delegate for the diaspora. Have you given any thought to how that person might be selected? So appreciating that we have diasporic communities in New York, Boston, Canada, Australia, wherever. Have you given any thought to how such a representative might be selected?
I think people in the diaspora would vote if they're interested. If they're interested, they would register to vote.
Okay.
There would probably be some type of fee associated with that to cover all that cost. And that the election commissions of Barbados can either send out paper ballots or figure out for the 21st century an electronic method of possibly doing that.
And it would be, you anticipate, or you envision a single representative for all diaspora communities, regardless of where they are? Yes. Okay.
But I also feel, I'm sorry, just to go off of what you said, I also feel as if, something should be left to home. Yes, we have opinions, but we're not there to experience it. So I don't believe, like, just because you live abroad and you're Barbadian, God knows I'm Barbadian and I love my country, but I cannot, I don't think that I should, I would not share the same, the same pain.
You have a divergent
So for
point of
me,
view.
So that's why for example, some people are advocating for the right to vote in elections, same as everyone who's living at home. Some people at home express the view that persons in the diaspora don't live there, won't experience it, and should not vote in those elections. And there's a third option, what you've advocated for, which is having a diaspora representative sitting in Parliament involved and able to represent views. So I'm just kind of wondering, in terms of everyone who's here and has an opportunity to kind of state a position, you know, clearly there are multiple positions in the room as to what that representation might look like. I would be interested in understanding how everyone feels, in perhaps as simple as a show of hands, around those three options, or if anyone has a fourth or fifth option around that.
Here's a question that came in on the email. As a Barbadian living in the USA over 45 years, is it a right for Barbadians to vote in elections in Barbados, even if you're not familiar with the political aspects or the educational aspects? I think that is an important consideration in the whole thing. That is by Egla Grace. I'll send you the email.
Mr. Edward, that question which my colleague has raised, came up in the London consultation. And my colleague, Commissioner Braffett, asked the person who advanced it, and as I ask you now, it would be helpful to the Commission if you formulated a small paper that spoke to how you envisage that representative interfacing with the Barbadian Parliament and representing the diaspora. Because you have the concept. I suggest you think it through, work it through, and give us the benefit of your ideas in a paper, rather than we try to interpret for you. You have a cutoff point of yesterday, but in reality, you have the end. I give you the say the middle of June, a month from today, more or less, get it to us. But please, because time is of the essence, and we would like to give consideration, because the diaspora issue is one of some interest. And the point raised by Mr. Marquis' young assistant is Mr. Holder's, is real, is a very real one. Elizabeth, I apologize, ma'am. Is a very real one. Why should people who have no the modern terminologies, no skin in the game, have an impact on an election when they don't have to live with the result?
Very unscientific. Those who think that Barbadians who live in the diaspora should be allowed to vote, could we have a show of hands? Vote in Barbados general elections.
With conditions that we need to know about ahead of time.
Hold a sec, ma'am. Hold a sec, ma'am. Ma'am, can you hold a sec, please? Can you hold a sec, please? Can you hold a second, please? Can you hold a second? Don't move, just stay there. But hold a second. You want to get the hands up again? Could we get the hands up again, please? Thank you. Yeah. Can we have the nose? How many people think there should be a representative? A diaspora representative. Is this in the Parliament? Mary? A diaspora representative in Parliament representing the diaspora. How many think so? Okay, ma'am. All right, folks. Yes, ma'am.
The people who showed your hands, how many of you have a national ID? Okay, I think if you have a national ID, you should be able to vote. If you have a national ID. And it should be done through absentee voting, mailed to the Consul
Mary.
General office
Folks, hold a minute.
in advance.
Hold a minute, please. Folks, don't let's get out of hand. We've already gone past the allotted time. Mary, let the lady speak first. You're going to get your chance, okay? Let's do what Barbadians do best. Behave well. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
No, I'm saying if you have a national ID, you should be allowed to vote with that number. And absentee ballot mailed to the Consul General office with some valid form of ID. And then mail in advance. And that's the input I feel that we over here can have. If you have a bank account over there, whatever happens over there affects you. If you have land, whatever happens over there affects you. So if all those things affect you, then you can vote. So that invalidated what people are saying. You live here, and you shouldn't have an input over there.
Mary, you're going to have Mary, make it short, please. We're up against some time.
Really, do you think the Barbadians that live in the U.S. have no interest in Barbados?
We know they do, Mary. That's a rhetorical question.
And do you think that affairs in Barbados don't affect Barbadians in the U.S.?
That is not the discussion. We recognize, and you know that I've always said, that Barbados would not be the same without Barbadians who live overseas, and the contributions of Barbadians who live overseas cannot be underestimated. But that is not the issue in terms of the constitutional point.
One final question is, what is a Barbadian? So we've talked a lot about Barbadians having certain rights, etc. In a diasporic context, do you consider a Barbadian? Do you think constitutionally a Barbadian should be a first generation Barbadian, second, third? Where do you think that ought to start? I think that's an important question for our diasporic environment. So we're hearing a suggestion here, only those born in Barbados.
I don't think my daughter was born, who came here 3 years old, know anything about Barbados. All this for me. Although I live here, I travel back to Barbados often. I'm always involved in the political, and I go to church. This is my rival here at my church in St. George.
All right, folks. We have to wrap up. Folks, we have to wrap up. I'm going to ask you to submit your comments. You can send them to me, but we've sent out information that you can submit directly to the Constitutional Reform Commission. It's on the back of the flyer. I want to thank you all for coming, and we're now getting excited, so I think we're going to have some follow-up discussions. But I'm going to give each commissioner a chance to make a few wrap-up comments, starting with Professor Cynthia Giles. Barbara Giles, sorry. Barbara Giles, properly.
So good evening, and of course thank you for hosting us. We're very appreciative of the efforts made by the Consulate and the Consul General and his staff to facilitating the commission. I just wanted to, I suppose, emphasize some of the things which you heard from both the Consul General and the Chair this evening in relation to the exercise that the commission is currently engaging. And so just let me say that from my point of view, clearly, I'm not a commissioner, by the way. I'm not one of those who will make the decision as to what will enter into the report or, in fact, into the draft constitution. But nevertheless, on behalf of the commission, I would like to say that clearly those who are present today and those who are in Barbados and will soon be on the way to the US The Commission is obviously very much appreciative of the concerns that you raised this evening. We appreciate, I say we, appreciate that public participation of this kind in the exercise of constitution building is absolutely critical to give the entire exercise some legitimacy, clearly, and of course to ensure that the process is in fact very effective. And so I have very little doubt that the kind of public participation that we are seeing here, and I'm going to speak about this in a while, seen here, and what we have seen in Barbados and what clearly the Commission experienced on its overseas trip to the UK will definitely have an impact. We don't know yet what impact, but will certainly have an impact on the recommendations of the Commission and of course on the draft constitution, which will come out of this entire process. I say this because it is very important in terms of drafting a constitution that you, Barbadians, at home and abroad, take every opportunity that is offered to you to present your views on what you would like to see in a modern constitution, largely because when you look at, and that's another issue, I see it was raised at the end of the discussion, and I will come to that in a while, but largely because when you look at your own constitution in Barbados, as distinct to some of the other constitutions across the Caribbean, there is not much avenue for public participation of Barbadians outside of an election. For sure, there is no requirement for a referendum, for instance, and we know that, and that is precisely why Barbados was able to move so swiftly without any hurdles to a republic, unlike what we saw in other parts of the Caribbean, where that proved to be a stumbling block. So a referendum is a good thing, but it can equally be a bad thing, and somebody is going to say that I should never say a referendum is a bad thing, because if the people say they don't want something, then the people say they don't want this. It's about public participation. So the point, though, in relation to constitutionality in Barbados, the absence of a referendum means that there is no real formal avenue outside of the vote, which many of you probably don't participate in, to really inform what is taking place domestically. So this may well be your only formal opportunity to participate in the process of constitutional building in Barbados, and it's for that reason I say that the Commission is absolutely grateful that you attended, though the audience is, yes, tiny. We would have liked to see a few more Barbadians, but I think that notwithstanding the numbers that we have here today, your participation is no less significant than if we had a hall of 1,000 individuals. At moments like this, it's not really the numbers that matter, but it's really the quality of the participation and the genuineness in terms of the concerns that you have expressed here before the Commission. And I think we're also grateful because the weather out there is quite muggy, and we're also told by the Consul General that there are a number of competing events that Barbadians probably are drawn to today. It's also a Saturday, so we are grateful that you have in fact turned out. Now, the formal constitutional reform, as you know, in Barbados, had to take in consideration public consultation. And yes, that public consultation did not take place in Barbados in every single constituency, but it did take place at various points, and of course, we are also trying to engage in something in terms of the diaspora. So that moments like this, and I think somebody captured it in the audience actually, moments like this do not come, or maybe it's the Consul General. Yes, it was the Consul General. Moments like this do not come very often in our lifetime. We know that. You may never get the opportunity again to participate in an exercise like this. And so, again, I want to reiterate that the Commission is grateful for your participation, that you availed yourself of the opportunity to capitalize on this very unique opportunity to help the Commission construct a national vision of what Barbados' constitutional order And given what has been coming up today, not just the constitutional order, but I hear you quite well. I hear you very loudly in terms of your concerns about the broader politics, the contextual issue of Barbadian politics, what both of those things should look like in the near future, and of course for future generations. So I just want to end by saying, there are a lot of other things I want to say, but I'm very conscious of the fact that we are moving from the hotel tomorrow very early, and so we need to get back to the hotel to put our business in order. So I just want to end by saying that the judgments on constitutional reform will come obviously during the final phase of the work of the Commission, and that is will take place during the deliberative process, which will begin early in June 2023. I think we have decided that we're going to begin the deliberations, serious deliberations and negotiations on what should come in the report and what perhaps could be placed in a parking lot for maybe some future generations to deal with. But I also want to say to you that, because I heard a certain recommendation here, and the chair did indicate that that recommendation was perhaps the most, it was clearly a lot of thought went into the presentation. And it's unfortunate, of course, the gentleman wasn't here. But the reality is that there are certain things that the Commission may not be able to include in the report for a number of reasons. But importantly, what I want to say to you is that you should also be mindful of the fact that the government of Barbados have recently appointed a parliamentary commission, a parliamentary reform commission. And for me, and that's just for me, it sends a powerful message. And that message it is sending is that they're not likely to tamper with the political form in Barbados, that they are sort of accepted that the parliamentary model is what will be. And the recommendation we heard is something which is the opposite of what we currently have in Barbados. So I'm just saying to you that in addition to monitoring what this commission is doing, perhaps we should also monitor what the Parliamentary Reform Commission is also going to say, and then do an assessment of course, what signal the Barbados government is sending to the public in relation to relations of power and constitutional relations of power in the country. So just in the final analysis, I want to just say that just to capture what I heard here, there's a lot of concern clearly about voting rights, and what I heard very clearly from the audience is a demand for inclusion and to extend the definition. I think Commissioner Gemma sort of touched on it in her last comments, but extending the definition of what it is to be a citizen. And the insistence on the part of some, not all, a minority here does not agree, that Barbadians should have that right to vote wherever Barbadians are in fact located. There is clearly a concern with issues of representation and participation. There's clearly a concern about fundamental rights, particularly health and education. And there was also raised was a contentious issue. I say contentious because it is one of the most contentious issues we've heard domestically and I think also internationally. But the more contentious issues of sexual orientation. I heard very clearly your concern about the need to balance rights with responsibility, especially in relation to freedom of expression. The most radical suggestion I heard today, and I treated it a while ago, was in relation to the model of government and, as I indicated, relations of power. The last minute reference to the referendum from the young lady, I think was also very important, and in fact it goes to the very heart of the amendment process in Barbados, as it does to issues of how we're going to include Barbadians, what we think about participation, and very clearly it is connected to, I think, popular notions of what should popular participation really include. I think that is in a nutshell what I got from the audience. A lot of it we have heard in Barbados, but clearly when we go overseas, one of the most critical issues for Barbadians is whether or not Barbadians should participate in the electoral process in the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Barrow-Giles. You're secretary to the commission. Okay, sorry. Senator Rogers?
Thank you very much, sir. First of all, I just wish to thank you, the Barbadians living in the US and throughout the diaspora, for your support of the country throughout the years, for all that you would have done to make Barbados what it is. And I'm also impressed by your passion. Having been away for decades, you still hold this close bond with the country, and we thank God for that as well. Where the Constitution is concerned, as the Secretary would have pointed out, there will be some robust deliberations coming up, but I want us to be cognizant, as I would have mentioned earlier, that Barbados is still very much a conservative society. And just as here, you would have taken baby steps to get to where you are. As the Secretary would have pointed out, there may be some things that we may have to put in the car park for another generation to deal with, but we will, through our deliberations, seek as much as possible to reflect the Barbados that we have today in projection for the Barbados we hope to see in the future. And I have no doubt that when we are finished, what will be presented will be something I believe that we will all be pleased with and will support as we go forward to continue to build Barbados beyond this time. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Jemmett?
I want to echo the sentiments expressed by my colleagues. Thank you so much for engaging so passionately and sharing with us so candidly. I want to take this opportunity to remind you, it's mentioned on the back of this document that I think all of you have, that if you don't have the time to go through the Constitution in its entirety, you can actually WhatsApp. There's a number here, 1246-832-6775. You can WhatsApp the word reform to that number and go through a number of exercises where you can get, bite-sized understandings of what the Constitution says on specific issues. And if that would be helpful in helping you to reduce some of your positions to writing, I would definitely encourage you to email us at the email address that's provided again on the back of this form with your suggestions so that we can take them into consideration when we start our deliberations, our formal deliberations in June. Of course, you can also follow everything that we're doing as a commission at CRC Barbados on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. And that way you can continue to be a part of the process and see what else we are doing. And having said that, I want to encourage you when you're reducing your contributions to writing, each and every one of you to consider very carefully what is a Barbadian citizen for the purposes of your submission. So what you're asking for, who should it apply to? Are you just talking about Barbadians that are living in the diaspora that were born in Barbados? Or do you think that should extend to children of one Barbadian parent, children of two Barbadian parents that were born somewhere else? Or do you think that should extend even further to third generations? Should it apply to people who are Barbadian by marriage? So just think very, very carefully about who it is that you want your suggestion to apply to, and let us know who that person is plainly when you email us. And secondly, apart from that, I want to also encourage you that when you send us a submission, particularly when it comes to representation or voting of diasporic communities, that you articulate for us how you see that working. Because there are multiple models, and we want to make sure that when we sit down to deliberate and we consider, we know what you as the person who's made a submission actually are asking for. We don't want to assume, because there are a number of different models, and unless you tell us what you mean, we won't really be sure what you're asking for. So it doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be written in legalese. If you just clearly communicate what it is you're asking for, I assure you we would give it full consideration when we begin our deliberations at the beginning of June. And I'm reinforcing that because June is only a few weeks away. So even if it is a short email that you send an addendum to later, I would encourage you to send us something before month end with your positions.
Final words from the chair.
My colleagues have said most of what I would have said, and I concur in what they've offered to you tonight. Primarily, however, I want to offer you my sincere thanks for sparing all of really nearly 4 hours with us. It shows a commitment and interest in Barbados that really makes it a pleasurable experience to know that really people have taken time to come out and show an interest in what work we are doing. As I said that in my opening remarks, we did not have the opportunity on all the past occasions to make any input. Velma Newton in her handbook said that, in fact, the Constitution of Barbados was amended 17 times in one form or another, with the biggies, the times I've identified. That's a lot of work. Things have happened. This exercise where you have a chance to make an input is meaningful. And going forward, I can say that you certainly, this meeting here in St. Gabriel's Church of special memory and significance to me, will be reflected in the report that we write. Those of you who have made contributions, names will be reflected in that report. And your contributions will also be annexed submissions to the final document that goes into the archives for future generations to know that this came from Brooklyn, May 20th, 2023, as a contribution to what turned out to be the Constitution of Barbados. Thank you all so much for coming out. God bless you and safe journeys home.
So it's just left for me to thank the team again, Secretary to the Commission, Professor Cynthia Barrow-Giles, Commissioner Sade Jemmett, and Senator John Rogers, and of course the Chair, Justice Christopher Blackman. And I wish to thank all of you for taking the time to come out and present. Obviously, we have to have some follow-up conversations on some other matters, but in time, we will get there. Thanks, everyone. We can go downstairs for another 20 minutes or so, 15 minutes, 10 minutes. I'm being signaled in the back. There are refreshments downstairs. Get home safely. Continue to follow the work of the Constitutional Review Commission. This is an important thing, and encourage your friends, families, fellow association members to participate. Thanks again. Good night.
No, so that your report is, no, you're never supposed to send questions, you're supposed to send the word reform there, and that's where you could go through the exercises.